Have you ever finished a tutorial, felt like a genius, and then immediately forgot everything you've learned? Well, you're not alone. It's actually pretty common. You spend 2 hours following along. The instructor makes it look super easy. You copy every step and everything works out. At the end, you think, nice, I learned that. When in reality, you didn't learn anything. And 5 hours after you're finished tagging along with your video, the things you've done are nothing but a distant memory. If you'd have to try it again without the video, the canvas would be blank, and so would be your mind. So what happened? Did you actually learn something from the tutorial, or was it a complete scam? In the next probably 10 minutes, you're gonna find out exactly that. And in order to do that, let's define what a tutorial even is. Because if you think about it, they are kind of weird. A tutorial isn't a lecture, it's not a textbook you go through yourself, it's not really practice. A tutorial is basically someone just saying, hey, I've already solved this problem, so let me show you how. And that sounds pretty awesome. You need to learn perspective, there's a tutorial. You need to learn to animate, there's a tutorial. And you need to draw hands without making them look like mutated little blobs, there's a tutorial. There's going to be a pre-recorded guy or girl that hopefully knows what they are doing and tries to teach a broad spectrum of people a singular skill. That's probably the general understanding of everyone when it comes to a tutorial. So now that we've got out of the way what a tutorial actually is, let us take a look at what makes a tutorial actually great, or not so great. And first, I'd like to cover something that I would call a tutorial addiction. It's probably the thing that most people suffer from, especially if they began to draw recently. And we've all been there. We want to learn drawing. So we watch a tutorial, and then another, and then another, and so on. And suddenly, we're watching 15 anatomy mistakes that beginners make, 40 anatomy mistakes that intermediate artists make, and 100 anatomy mistakes that professionals make and they don't even know it. And at this point in time, we're not learning anatomy mistakes. We are collecting them like scalpers do Pokemon cards. And somehow, after a 5-hour watch session, we still haven't drawn anything at all. The weird thing about tutorials is they feel very productive. After watching one, we're feeling like, well, I've accomplished something, right? Sometimes you take notes. Sometimes you learn the concept and you gained knowledge. And at least that's what it feels like. But feeling productive and actually being productive isn't always the same thing, especially when it comes to drawing. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that feel productive and are productive, and they are not even related to actually drawing when it comes to drawing. But that's kind of the stuff that you do when you already know how to draw, and it's usually not watching a tutorial. People, and especially beginner artists, are very prone to get kind of addicted to a tutorial or to an entire series or a channel that uploads one tutorial every day, which is not an all bad thing. It shows that somebody has a real passion and wants to inform themselves about a topic. But with only watching tutorials, you're just not gonna get any better. And here is where the second point of this little tutorial TED Talk comes into place. The lie that your brain tells you when you watch one of these tutorials. It confuses recognition with mastery. Let me explain. Imagine I show you a drawing tutorial. The artist explains perspective. You watch carefully. Everything makes sense. You're nodding along. You understand every step. But understanding someone else's solution is very different from creating your own. It's like watching a cooking video. You can watch someone make the perfect cake and understand every ingredient and the recipe perfectly. But that doesn't magically make you a baker that knows all the ins and outs of baking a cake that weren't specifically talked about in the tutorial. And it's just a fact that some people are going to learn quite a bit more than others from seeing the solution of some random guy on the internet rather than creating their own. But even for people that are really good at learning from this kind of thing, there's going to be a ceiling, a literal skill gap that you cannot ever close by just watching. And it's very easy to fall into this kind of trap, because let's be honest, actual practice kind of sucks. At least at first. Drawing your own thing is hard, and coding your own project is hard. Writing your own story is probably even harder. Basically, everything feels 10 times tougher if nobody is holding your hand. And tutorials remove all that pain. They remove every kind of uncertainty. They remove you doing mistakes. They remove all the confusion that you have about a topic. In short, they feel good. And as I said earlier, in short, practice feels bad. Just because of this little thing, it is super easy to fall into the trap of watching a tutorial and feeling productive and feeling like you are practicing or have practiced something. Even if you tag along, following a plan step by step and tagging along and being always certain on what to do and never having to think for yourself is just plain different than being thrown into the cold water or throwing yourself into the cold water and just making mistake after mistake after mistake. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, I just watch a tutorial and then I practice on my own. And while this sounds pretty good, there's usually a catch. They start out practicing, maybe even without a tutorial, but then they hit a problem. And instead of solving it, they watch another tutorial. They hit another problem and another tutorial, and so on. This kind of learning workflow feels a lot better, and it also sounds a lot better on paper. But in actuality, it's pretty much the same, with extra steps. The only upside these people have over someone that only watches tutorial after tutorial is that they are refining their motor skills and actual hand-eye coordination while they are, well, halfway learning what they need to. And towards all of this, what I have told you about tutorials making it seem so easy to learn something, comes the factor of time. Because in today's day and age, nobody has time to learn 20 years of art just in order to draw as a hobby, which is fully understandable. But there are ways and techniques to skip a lot of time and learning. But these kind of ways are usually not just watching a tutorial and feeling great about yourself. But let's get back to the topic and make an actual example. Here's a challenge for you, that after your next tutorial, a tutorial about something that you have no idea about. It doesn't really need to be related to drawing. It just needs to be something you have no clue about what you're doing. After you finish this tutorial, close it and then recreate the project completely from memory. No pausing, no rewinding, and no checking your notes. Just try it. The results are usually going to be terrifying. You will discover very quickly what you actually learned and what you just recognized. And that's the valuable part, because now you know where all the gaps are. And those gaps are the real curriculum that you need to study, not the entire tutorial. And after you've done this, I'm pretty sure you already know the answer to the question of this video. Are tutorials a scam? No, not even close. Tutorials are completely amazing. The fact that you, for example, can learn from world-class artists and programmers, musicians, and even doctors for free is kind of insane. The problem is not the tutorial. The problem is using tutorial as a substitute for practice and just misusing them entirely. They are like training wheels on a bike. They're great if you can't do it at all. But the moment there is the slightest bit of, actual writing skill that you have, the wheels gotta go unless you want to have them for all eternity. And at some point in your journey to learn to ride a bike, you're gonna fall on your ass or you're gonna fall on your face. And that exact fall is going to be a very good lesson. So, if a tutorial is not actually a scam, if they're so amazing, then how do we actually use them? It's pretty easy. Here's the approach that helped me first, and I'm going to go over another approach after that. When I was a little art baby, I would just draw things I saw on the internet, at random, just whenever I could, wherever I could, or whenever I had the will to do so. Obviously, my stuff was garbage, so I analyzed what was different from my stuff compared to the amazing artists that I looked up to. I wrote down what was wrong and searched specific tutorials that would explain that specific concept of art to me. After that, I watched only speed paintings or real-time drawing recordings of said guys, recognizing the theory that I've learned before, out in the wild, so to say. With the knowledge that I got from the tutorial, and the examples I found myself of people doing the exact thing in their process, I started to practice that thing by implementing it into my own workflow. At first, it sucked, obviously, but with time, it turned better and better. The nice thing about this method is that you tackle things on their own. You don't have to worry about getting overwhelmed by 10 different concepts of art that you all have to balance. You just focus on one thing and one thing only, even in the finished piece. And after just a couple of times practicing it, it's already etched into my mind. I could see immediate improvement, and I could know I'm ready for the next step. You do that over and over, and suddenly you're a professional. But I know that this method doesn't really suit everyone. Tackling everything each on their own, hardcore analyzing things, and sometimes having to watch a 10-hour drawing video without it being sped up just to see what the artist is actually doing. It can be a little bit boring. Well, who am I kidding? It is boring. But you don't have to worry. There are obviously different ways that you can use a tutorial and your practice hours a day that still make you improve lots faster than just watching a tutorial on loop. Instead of watching tutorial after tutorial, just try making a project until you run into a problem. Try to solve that problem on your own without an actual tutorial. Maybe Google a few things adjacent to it, but don't Google the entire thing. Get a good grasp about what could be wrong, and only after that step, watch a tutorial. Don't watch it over and over, just do it once or twice so you know what's actually going on and what you can do to fix your shit. After that, immediately go back to your project. Apply what you've learned, and if you're still getting stuck at the same thing, don't just go and open another tutorial different from the one you've watched. Use the knowledge that you've acquired through the first thing that you've watched to maybe solve the second thing that you're stuck at. Don't treat the tutorial as the solution to your problem. Treat it as a tool to help you solve it yourself. So let's recap a little bit. Are tutorials a scam? No, they are not. But they can become very much like a scam if you fall for their traps. They're a place where it feels like you're learning because you're constantly surrounded by new information. Meanwhile, the actual learning to be done is waiting for you outside of the bubble of your TV. Messy projects, mistakes, and failed attempts are all part of a bigger learning thing that you will never have if you just rely on tutorials to make everything perfect on the first try. So the next time you're about to watch another tutorial, ask yourself one question. Am I learning because I need this? Or am I watching because I'm afraid to start without? Because the answer to that question is usually the difference between becoming actually skilled and becoming really, really good at watching other people be skilled. Let me know what you think, and happy drawing.